This is a Fox News Extreme Weather Alert. I'm Brett Baer in Washington. A new track for Hurricane Matthew. A massive storm heading toward Florida at this hour. We will, of course, have extensive reaction to last night's vice presidential debate and all the politics today in a few minutes. But first, this top story, this hurricane coming our way to the U.S. Hurricane Matthew is now a Category 3, but it could strengthen. It's bearing down on the Bahamas after savaging Haiti and grazing Cuba. Next up, the American Atlantic coast, where states of emergency are paving the way for what could be mandatory evacuations for some and evacuations of millions of people. We have Fox team coverage tonight. Rick Reichmuth is at the Fox Weather Center in New York with what the experts are saying about the storm's path. But we begin with correspondent Phil Keating in Jupiter, Florida, where they are preparing for the worst. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, Brett. Mandatory evacuations are already in effect in parts of Florida. Tonight, sometime this evening, Jupiter Island is expected to be under a mandatory evacuation. And up and down Florida's east coast, at many gas stations, this is what you're finding. Bagged up pump handles and underground fuel tanks that have dried up. They're empty after a very long day of long lines of drivers trying to fill up and fuel up in case they need to evacuate. But that could be a good sign that 11 years after the last major hurricane slammed into the Sunshine State, that people are taking this storm seriously. Hurricane Matthew is big, it's strong, and powerfully barreling through the Bahamas as it chugs towards Florida. The current storm track projects the Cat 3 major hurricane may strengthen back up to a Category 4 when the eye approaches the eastern coast of Florida. On the Space Coast, mandatory evacuations began at 3 o'clock, impacting Brevard County's barrier islands and the cities of Melbourne, Cocoa Beach, Cape Canaveral, and Merritt Island.
You can always rebuild, you can always repair property, you cannot restore a life.
The president is urging everyone on the entire U.S. East Coast to take this storm very seriously.
I want to make sure that everybody is paying attention to your local officials.
Voluntary evacuations are also happening up and down the state. The hurricane warning applies to Broward County on the south up to Jacksonville. Many gas stations have already run out of fuel, closing shop and sending drivers to sit in long lines at the crowded fuel stations, which remain open. Florida residents also stocking up on water and food supplies, while utility companies pre-position extra crews, anticipating there will be power outages. Tuesday, Matthew slammed into Haiti and Cuba as a Category 4, dropping close to 40 inches of rain in some spots and killing at least a dozen people. Many others still remain missing. Florida Governor Rick Scott is urging anyone who plans to evacuate to do so now before the highways clog with traffic. He has also activated and deployed 500 National Guardsmen and women.
That everyone in our state must prepare now for a direct hit. We have less than 24 hours left to prepare, evacuate, and shelter.
And the U.S. Navy Admiral announcing 15 minutes ago that 200 U.S. troops are now on their way to Haiti to help render and deliver aid. FEMA, domestically speaking, has already pre-positioned response teams in Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas who are prepared and able to deliver ice, food, and water wherever it is needed. The main east-west highway connecting Brevard County, the Space Coast, with Metro Orlando inland, 528 tolls have been lifted, and the westbound traffic tonight is heavy. Brett?
We'll follow it. Phil Keating live in Jupiter, Florida. Phil, thank you. Let's find out the different paths Hurricane Matthew could take. The latest 5 p.m. alert from the Hurricane Center had the massive storm jogging a little further west with Florida in its sights. Meteorologist Rick Reichmuth is at the Fox Weather Center in New York. Good evening, Rick.
Good evening. Yeah, Florida's certainly in the sights. It's just exactly how close does the storm get to the coast. It's going to have major implications, a slight deviation. Here's where the storm is now. Across parts of the southern Bahamas, it's moving northwest. That means by the time this is done, it's going to pretty much impact all of the Bahama Islands, and it's a Category 3, 120-mile-an-hour storm. Hurricane hunters are in the storm right now, and they did just find pressure lower than that 963. Maybe we are starting to see that trends of strengthening, and that's what the official forecast does, is brings us rises to a Category 4 storm by tomorrow. Hurricane warnings in effect all throughout the Bahamas, but also just from the north of Miami, as well as Lake Okeechobee, and then up towards the Daytona Beach area. By tomorrow afternoon, we're going to start to see those winds come on shore as tropical storm, maybe even as early as around noontime from Miami up towards West Palm. This yellow that you see, that is tropical storm force winds. The red is hurricane force winds. By tomorrow at around 6 p.m., maybe our first hurricane force winds from around West Palm Beach. And then we're going to see that just continue to rake this area throughout the overnight hours tomorrow night and throughout much of the day on Friday. That white, by the way, that is major hurricane right off the shore here. And what we are likely looking at is, instead of a storm that moves on perpendicularly to a coastline, normally what we see when a hurricane makes landfall, we're going to watch one here that just moves up parallel to the coast and impacts a lot more people along a lot of larger area beaches. Still not an exact idea of where the center of the storm goes, but you get the general idea, pulling parallel to Florida, parallel through the Georgia and the Carolina coastline, and then maybe making a deviation I'll show you in a second. Category 4 storm by tomorrow, but the latest storm, as you just said, Brett, nudges this even a little bit farther towards the west. That means Friday, sometime in the midday, we're talking about a storm moving over Cape Canaveral and the Space Coast as a Category 4 hurricane. This would be something we've never seen in Florida. This ends up verifying, and if it goes any farther towards the west, we have a landfall and we have a gigantic storm surge pulling in at places like Jacksonville and up towards around Savannah. Then the latest thinking, yesterday we were saying we think the storm is going to go up towards the north. Now the system, the weakness in the atmosphere that was going to allow this to be pulled towards the north, don't think that's going to happen. That means we're going to likely see this get nudged here back to the south, and we might be looking at a little bit of a repeat here sometime maybe over Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, somewhere back here in Florida. Very early to say that, but an interesting trend that we're now starting to see potentially a little bit of a loop happen with this storm. In the short term, though, by tomorrow midday in Florida, the impacts begin.
My old job of tracking hurricanes and weathering them in those storms, you know that the top of that circle, the northern part as it flips, is really the danger with the wind and the high seas. If it gets that close to Florida, you're talking about some cities that could see some high water levels.
A lot of cities and a lot of population zone along this area here of Florida. These beaches are areas that have not been hit in a very long time. Population in Florida has exploded over the last number of years, so a lot more people dealing with potentially a major hurricane for the first time.
All right, we'll track it here. Rick, as always, thank you. Now to politics, a storm of a different kind. The fallout from Tuesday's vice presidential debate and the preparations already underway for this Sunday's round 2 between the top of the ticket nominees. Senior national correspondent John Roberts is traveling with the Donald Trump campaign as the Republican nominee concludes his western swing. He's in Reno, Nevada tonight.
Governor Mike Pence. Shunning the limelight of what was widely seen as a clear victory in last night's vice presidential debate, Indiana Governor Mike Pence promptly handed the trophy to his boss.
Some people think I won. But I'll leave that to others. You know, what I can tell you is from where I sat, Donald Trump won the debate. Donald Trump's vision to make America great again won the debate.
How many of you watched the vice presidential debate last night? Mike Pence did an incredible job, and I'm getting a lot of credit because that's really my first so-called choice. That was my first hire, as we would say in Las Vegas.
Hillary Clinton, who was off the campaign trail today, telephoned Senator Tim Kaine to thank him for his performance last night, though by many analyses he was far too eager to interrupt his opponent.
Hold on a second. It's my time, Senator.
It is, in fact, the governor's time.
This is your 2 minutes. Thanks, I forgive you. She said she shouldn't have said half.
Governor, this is Senator Kaine's 2 minutes, please.
Yeah, that's right. So now we're even.
Kaine also lost points by relying too much on contrived, practiced lines.
Donald Trump can't start a Twitter war with Miss Universe without shooting himself in the foot. He loves dictators. He's got kind of a personal Mount Rushmore. Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, Muammar Gaddafi, and Saddam Hussein.
Did you work on that one a long time? Because that had a lot of really creative lines in it.
Pence appeared to break with Trump on Russia, calling Vladimir Putin a, quote, small bullying man. Outside Las Vegas today, Trump added more ambiguity to his views of Putin.
They say Donald Trump loves Putin. I don't love, I don't hate. We'll see how it works. We'll see. Maybe we'll have a good relationship. Maybe we'll have a horrible relationship.
Now attention turns to the next presidential debate Sunday in St. Louis. Donald Trump has scrapped several planned campaign rallies later this week to focus on debate preparation. One bright spot for Trump remains Ohio. A new Monmouth poll there shows Hillary Clinton with a 2-point lead, half of what she had in the last Monmouth survey. Other polls show Trump either tied or with a slight lead.
That works. John, thank you. Well, what do you think? Do you think the vice presidential debate will influence voters in any way? Let me know on Twitter, @BrettBaer. You can use the hashtag special report. Of course, both of last night's VP nominees are being accused of stretching the truth during that debate at times. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen is here with a bit of a fact check.
When they weren't tripping over each other.
Senator, I think I'm still on my time.
Well, isn't this a discussion?
The vice presidential nominees occasionally tripped up their facts. Exhibit A, Senator Kane's claim on Hillary Clinton's behalf about the Iran nuclear deal.
She worked a tough negotiation with nations around the world to eliminate the Iranian nuclear weapons program without firing a shot.
Eliminate the Iranian nuclear weapons
Absolutely.
In fact, the deal preserved Iran's nuclear program, with the regime still permitted, for example, to enrich uranium to low levels. And many analysts warn that with various sunset clauses expiring in 2026, 2031, and beyond, Iran could well resume the activities needed to produce a nuclear weapon. Exhibit B.
This is one where we can just kind of go to the tape on it. But Governor Pence said, inarguably, Vladimir Putin is a better leader than President Obama.
That is absolutely inaccurate.
In fact, if we go to the video, Governor Pence said almost exactly what Tim Kaine said he said.
I think it's inarguable that Vladimir Putin has been a stronger leader in his country than Barack Obama has been in this country.
Pence faulted Secretary Clinton for failing to negotiate a status of forces agreement that would have allowed U.S. combat forces to remain in Iraq under requisite legal protections beyond 2011. Kaine blamed the Iraqis for torpedoing those negotiations.
And guess what? If a nation where our troops are serving does not want us to stay, we're not going to stay without them being protected.
In fact, by the time President Obama leaves office, some 5,000 troops will remain in Iraq without those protections. And General David Petraeus recently shed further light on this in an interview with the Fox News documentary unit.
There was an opportunity, I do think, if we pursued it aggressively, to keep forces there, perhaps to do it without a status forces agreement.
He never said that, Senator.
And he is absolutely decided. Saudi Arabia, South Korea, Japan.
In fact, Donald Trump has suggested those countries go nuclear.
So North Korea has nukes. Japan has a problem with that. I mean, they have a big problem with it. Maybe they would, in fact, be better off if they defend themselves from North Korea. Maybe we would be better off, including with nukes, yes.
And Trump made similar comments to Anderson Cooper of CNN 5 days earlier about South Korea and Saudi Arabia. The exercise goes to show that if debates are a form of verbal combat, the first casualty in them, as in war itself, Brett, is very often the truth.
All right, James, thank you. One of the most emotional issues involving the vice presidential nominees last night, abortion in general, but partial birth abortion in particular. Chief Legal Correspondent Shannon Bream tells us where that issue may play in this election.
Bible verses, Mother Teresa, and an agreement on the issue of abortion. Both the vice presidential nominees say they personally oppose it, but Senator Tim Kaine says he draws the line at the suggestion he and Democrat nominee Hillary Clinton should use their positions as elected officials to impose their views on others.
Like you should live fully and with enthusiasm the commands of your faith, but it is not the role of the public servant to mandate that for everybody else.
Groups like Catholics for Choice agree only a woman should decide.
She can certainly bring in anyone and should consult her faith, her doctor, her family, her partner, her husband, her mother, anyone that she feels is important to bring into the decision. Policymakers, religious leaders do not belong in that decision.
Governor Mike Pence, saying he had a, quote, great deal of respect for Kaine's sincere faith, took the opportunity to press him on standing with Clinton on partial birth abortion, a late-term procedure which involves a partial delivery and then abortion.
And I know, Senator Kaine, you hold pro-life views personally, but the very idea that a child that is almost born into the world could still have their life taken from them is just anathema to me.
Recent polling from Marist shows 78% of Americans favor limiting abortion to the first trimester and extreme circumstances.
Again, this includes 85% of African Americans, 84% of Latino voters, and interestingly, 62% of voters that call themselves pro-choice. So when it comes to partial birth abortion, again, any defense of that position is just far outside the mainstream and is not the consensus of this country.
Kaine fired back at Pence by pointing out Trump's statement in March that women who seek illegal abortions should face a penalty.
And we don't think that women should be punished, as Donald Trump said they should, for making the decision.
Trump quickly recanted that statement, saying only someone who performed an illegal abortion should be held legally responsible. But it was still being debated last night. Pence said Trump was inarticulate on the issue because he's, quote, not a polished politician like Kaine and Clinton. Trump and Clinton have yet to address the abortion issue in a head-to-head debate. Brett.
Shannon, thank you. Clinton Foundation officials say they have sent in additional financial information to the New York State government to make sure the charity is in compliance with laws governing the solicitation of funds. The New York State attorney says the Clinton Global Initiative had failed to submit one particular form for the year 2012. You'll remember we reported the New York AG has issued a cease and desist order to the Donald Trump Foundation over its alleged failure to properly register under the same law. This is a Fox News alert. What could be another major embarrassment for the U.S. intelligence community on the scale of the 2013 Edward Snowden leaks. Another contractor for the National Security Agency is accused of removing highly classified information used to crack the computer networks of foreign governments. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here tonight with that breaking story. Good evening, Catherine.
Well, thank you, Brett. According to the criminal complaint, 51-year-old NSA contractor Harold Thomas Martin III is accused of stealing top-secret information that, if sold to another country, would cause exceptionally grave damage to national security. The government says 6 documents were recovered from Martin's home and car in Maryland. They were marked as classified and reportedly include codes to break into foreign government computer networks. Interviewed by the FBI, Martin initially denied any knowledge, then admitted he took the FBI files. Martin works for Booz Allen Hamilton, the same company that employed NSA leaker Edward Snowden. In a statement, Booz Allen said it began cooperating with the FBI after Martin's August arrest. The White House spokesman today did not minimize the fallout.
This is certainly a situation that the Department of Justice takes seriously, as evidenced by their complaint.
It's not publicly known tonight whether those secrets, were ever sold, Brett.
We'll follow that. And after 3 years of court action, the Justice Department, Catherine, suddenly drops criminal charges against this arms dealer who had threatened to expose secrets that would potentially embarrass Secretary Clinton and President Obama.
Well, Brett, based on emails and court documents exclusively reviewed by Fox News, arms dealer Mark Turi makes a compelling case the Obama administration authorized a covert weapons program in 2011. Since the U.S. could not sell directly to the Libyan opposition, Turi was going to be the middleman, but was ultimately cut out. The operation spun out of control, arming America's enemies.
Well, this would come under Secretary Clinton's watch.
As part of the workaround, the U.S. would supply conventional weapons to another U.S. ally, Qatar.
There's a 60-millimeter mortar with optics, 120-millimeter mortar, all conventional type weapons. If you want to limit the exposure to the U.S. government, what you simply do is outsource it to your allies.
Turi insists he never shipped any weapons to Qatar, and others stole the zero-footprint idea.
The State Department had a lead on this. They were going to run it with their people. When this equipment landed in Libya, half went one way and the half went the other way. The half that went the other way is the half that ended up in Syria.
With the trial looming next month and today's deadline to make evidence available to the defense, the Justice Department filed a motion to drop the criminal charges, citing several factors, including recent discovery rulings by the court. Fox News pressed the Justice Department tonight on why it abandoned the case on the eve of the election and after 5 years of litigation, but there was nothing beyond the court filings, Brett.
We'll follow this as well. Catherine, thank you. California is asking the Obama administration for permission to become the first state to offer Obamacare to illegal immigrants. The bill's sponsor says it would allow 390,000 illegal immigrants to receive health insurance. However, it would not be subsidized. Critics say it is the latest sign the president misrepresented the purpose of the law, which he said would not apply to illegal immigrants. The cost of expanding Medicaid under Obamacare is rising faster than expected in many places. That has lawmakers in at least 3 states pushing to require Medicaid recipients to pay more toward their insurance. Opponents say that would mean thousands of low-income families would have to drop off the Medicaid rolls. President Obama says news that the Paris Climate Change Agreement will take effect in 1 month could be a turning point for the planet. The United Nations says the addition of Nepal, Canada, and the 7 European Union countries meets the final threshold toward entering the deal into full force. Not everyone, of course, is happy about it. House Speaker Paul Ryan says the Paris Climate Agreement would be disastrous for the U.S. economy. Everyone concerned is being very careful about their responses to a report that Yahoo scanned incoming email to hundreds of millions of accounts for Uncle Sam. Correspondent Rich Edson is at the White House tonight to explain and what everybody's tiptoeing around.
Yahoo, the intelligence agencies, and the White House have very little to say about a Reuters report claiming the tech company secretly built a custom software program to search all its customers' incoming emails for specific information at the request of government officials.
As much as I would like to discuss publicly the details of this report, I'm just not going to be in a position to.
White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest then claimed the administration had pushed and implemented new measures to restrain government spying capabilities and safeguard privacy. A Yahoo spokesperson tells Fox News in a statement the Reuters report is, quote, misleading, and, quote, we narrowly interpret every government request for user data to minimize disclosure. The mail scanning described in the article does not exist on our systems. When asked for further details or whether the company is denying all email scanning, a Yahoo spokesperson declined further comment.
I get a little uncomfortable. This would be the equivalent of the FBI walking through the entire neighborhood, searching everybody's house, looking for an item in a crime. I mean, at some point, I think this does tend to be overly broad.
The public is entitled to know how broadly is the government construing its surveillance authorities. How broad are the surveillance requests that it's serving on technology companies?
Tech companies repeatedly tout their privacy cultures. Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer is even quoted in a privacy-focused tech website saying, quote, it is time for the United States government to act to restore the confidence of citizens around the world. Citing 2 former Yahoo employees, Reuters reports Mayer decided to obey the government directive to scan incoming emails, angering senior executives. In a statement, Google says, quote, we've never received such a request, but if we did, our response would be simple. No way. This issue continues to challenge the White House. Months ago, the administration and Apple fought publicly over a request by the government to unlock the iPhone of the San Bernardino shooter. Eventually, the government hired an outside firm to crack that iPhone. Brett?
Rich Edson, live in the North Lawn. Rich, thank you. A man with a knife stabbed 2 police officers in Brussels today. Prosecutors say the incident may be terror-related. A 3rd officer suffered a broken nose but was able to shoot the assailant, who was then arrested. In August, a man with a machete shouted Allahu Akbar as he seriously wounded 2 policewomen in southern Belgium. Back here in the U.S., President Obama is still taking major heat over his failure to assure better health care for the nation's veterans. Now, a new report about one of the worst offenders indicates not much has changed. Here's correspondent Doug McKelway.
Excessive wait times still persist at the Phoenix Veterans Hospital 2 years after reports of falsified patient wait times at the facility exploded into a full-blown scandal.
It's amazing to me that the Ground Zero facility in Phoenix actually still can't seem to get things right.
The Inspector General's report, based on tips from a confidential source, confirmed 4,800 patients at the Phoenix VA experienced wait times in excess of 30 days. Another 10,000 vets seeking appointments at nearby community care centers also had to wait longer than 30 days. In one egregious case, a vascular patient waited over 300 days for care. All this after the original wait time scandal forced the resignation of VA Secretary Eric Shinseki, the appointment of his replacement Bob McDonald, and the passage by Congress of a $10 billion Veterans Choice Bill. Jay Sekulow, who has written extensively about bureaucracies and red tape, believes the VA is incapable of change.
In other words, the bureaucracy is so
so entrenched that unless there's a top-to-bottom change in the VA, in particular in Phoenix, but I think the VA generally, that you're not going to solve this problem.
It's that mid-level management that knows they will outlast any president, any secretary, and certainly any House chairman, and they'll keep trying to do things the way they've always done it.
Miller notes the IG report itself is mired in the same bureaucraties which it is tasked with examining. The report, quote, determined that untimely care from the Phoenix VA healthcare system may have contributed to the death of one patient. Yet it identifies hundreds of others who died before their scheduled appointments, leaving unclear whether those patients died as a result of not being seen or from age and infirmities that would have killed them anyway.
It's not just Phoenix where excessive wait times still persist. The VA's own statistics show that as of September 15th of this year, over 500,000 veterans nationwide waited over 30 days past their preferred date to see a doctor. Brett?
Important story. Doug, thank you. 3 European scientists have been awarded the Nobel Prize for Chemistry after developing the world's smallest machines. The devices are 1,000 times thinner than a human hair. They say they're said to have the potential to revolutionize computer and energy systems. Did the vice presidential debate change any minds? And what about today's politics? We'll ask our panel when we come back.
Donald Trump called me late last night from Nevada to congratulate me on the debate. That really meant the world to me. It truly did. Some people think I won. From where I sat, Donald Trump won the debate. Donald Trump's vision to make America great again won the debate.
And Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, said it was the best vice presidential debate performance ever. That's what he said today. Some new polls out today. One in Monmouth, a Monmouth poll, Monmouth University in Ohio, shows Hillary Clinton with a slight lead, although within the margin of error there in Ohio. That is down from 4 to 2. 44-42. And then if you look at our average, same position as we've been showing you. This is an average of recent polls that Fox considers legitimate, and that is where it stands as of tonight. Let's bring in our panel. Charles Hurt, political columnist for the Washington Times. Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio. And Jonah Goldberg, senior editor at National Review. Okay, Mara, fallout from the debate, and what does it mean?
That's the real question. What does it mean? Pence won the debate. I think that was pretty clear. He was smoother. He didn't take the bait. Tim Kaine came in with a clear strategy to mention every outrageous thing Donald Trump has ever said and try to force Mike Pence to defend it, and he didn't. So Pence won the debate. Now, what does that mean for the race itself? I think probably very little. I don't see a vice presidential debate really shifting the dynamic, but he reassured a lot of Republicans, Pence did, who were feeling pretty bad after Donald Trump's performance in the first debate, and he teed up Trump nicely, I think, for the next debate. And Trump is working harder and preparing more for that one.
Charlie.
And hopefully Donald Trump will learn a few lessons from his understudy in that debate. But I thought that Tim Kaine had his moments. He was able to get a lot of we did spend a lot of the debate listening to them talk about the accusations that have been leveled against Donald Trump. So in that respect, I think that people have gone a little bit overboard about how badly he did. But the other thing that sort of struck me was the degree to which he tried to take even their the Hillary Clinton and the administration's foreign policy failures and tried to kind of sort of turn it around to being somehow Donald Trump's fault for not paying his taxes in 1995. It kind of strained credulity at times, and that does a real disservice to a guy that has a bright future ahead of him in politics and has a sort of a reputation for being a nonpartisan truth speaker. So
the people, the whispers here in Washington about Mike Pence 2020 after that performance last night, and that somehow he's, coalescing that's really where the Republicans should be. For Donald Trump, he said, this was my first hire, and it shows I had good judgment.
Yeah, well, and that's a great spin for him to do, because
it was a good performance. It was a broad-shouldered performance, one might even say. And I agree with Mara. It was. I may even agree with Donald Trump that it was the best vice presidential debate performance in history, but that's also sort of like saying the best Oktoberfest in Orlando. It's saying something, but it's not saying a lot.
I know we could find an Oktoberfest in Orlando that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good for Orlando. Vice presidential debates don't do much, and I think that one of the reasons why Pence did not forthrightly take the bait and defend Donald Trump on a lot of those accusations is that there aren't a lot of good defenses for some of that stuff, and that's not a conversation he wants to have. But also, if he is thinking about 2020, he doesn't want videotape existing 4 years from now where he's defending some of this stuff when the conventional wisdom or the zeitgeist has changed in a unpleasant way.
What he did was he pivoted, and that is not what Donald Trump did that first debate. This is Governor Scott Walker was his debate opponent in the mock debates that Governor Pence had. Governor Walker playing the role of Senator Kaine, and he was asked about some of those answers that Pence had today.
By denying that Trump said things that he said, didn't he kind of create an alternate reality version of Donald Trump?
No, I think Mike's point in all this was that the context was different than what Senator Kaine was saying. That certainly, for example, with Putin, we've talked about this many times before, he doesn't admire Putin for being a leader. He was just pointing out how weak he thought President Obama's leadership was. And so I think his point was not that he didn't say those exact things, but that Senator Kaine repeatedly was selectively taking things out of context.
By the way, Senator Kaine just moments ago speaking to reporters saying last night got a little feisty. He said he's been getting dinged for interrupting, including even by his wife. And so there you have it. Is this going to have any repercussions down the road?
I think the biggest repercussions is for Mike Pence's future political ambitions. He did himself a lot of good. There were some people who thought he was running for president last night and Tim Kaine was running for vice president. But as Jonah said, didn't take the bait, didn't try to defend Donald Trump. There were even reports that Donald Trump didn't like that. But although today he said he was pretty they denied it, and he said he was happy with it. But I think Mike Pence came out of this with his ambitions intact. And it's not a small thing to be able to run as Donald Trump's running mate without getting totally tied to every controversial thing that Donald Trump has said.
Because I want to turn on.
Well, I just think it's interesting that, obviously Mike Pence did sort of deflect and change the subject on a lot of these things, and he did a pretty effective job at it. But the other thing that he talked about how polished what a politician Tim Kaine is and what Hillary Clinton is. And of course, the perfect political answer to a flubbed debate performance is to say, yeah, people said I'm getting dinged because I interrupted too much, including for my wife. Perfect political pitch, and that's not what you're going to get from the Donald Trump campaign.
Okay, speaking of Donald Trump, speaking today about Obamacare and something the former president said the other day.
Bill Clinton, yesterday, oh, they're so angry at him. They scolded him yesterday. Clinton added, it doesn't make any sense. The insurance model just doesn't work. I think that President Obama should apologize for Obamacare.
You've got this crazy system where all of a sudden 25 million more people have health care, and then the people are out there busting it sometimes 60 hours a week, wind up with their premiums doubled and their coverage cut in half. It's the craziest thing in the world.
Now, today, the former president walked that back a bit, saying he's for the Affordable Care Act, but it needs to be fixed. Kellyanne Conway today, Jonah, said that they should have Bill Clinton in the spin room for them on Obamacare.
Yeah, this was the most unforced, unprovoked gift, error we've had in this cycle in a long time.
That's Bill Clinton's specialty.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, sometimes, the big dog needs to be on a leash. And I think that whether or not, the Trump campaign has not effectively gone after Obamacare much in the last few months. But where I think this really could have lasting repercussions is on all of these tight Senate races. Every single Republican Senate candidate is going to be taking that soundbite and playing it over and over and over again, saying, even Bill Clinton recognizes that Obamacare is crazy and a disaster, and that's going to be very useful for the RNC.
It is a political albatross, Mara.
Yes, it's always been, in a couple cycles now, we've seen Obamacare be an albatross. It hasn't really risen to the top of voters' concerns this year, mostly because Trump hasn't been talking about it. Healthcare hasn't been the #1 thing, but it is an albatross, and Donald Trump has pretty much allied himself with the House Republicans in terms of repealing it completely and then putting something in its place.
Because you have state after state that is down to basically no choices. One choice for health care and premiums and deductibles going up. I mean, that's not a great equation as you're heading into the voting booth.
It's terrible. And it also reveals, Bill Clinton's gut political instincts are so good, and he realizes that it's a real problem. And he is the explainer in chief. But when President Obama tries to go out there and explain this stuff, people are like, what are you talking about? He gets it. Bill Clinton gets it.
Next up, the debate over partial birth abortion.
Women have this right to make this highly personal decision with their family, in accordance with their faith, with their doctor.
Just to be clear, just no without any exceptions.
No, I have been on record in favor of a late pregnancy regulation that would have exceptions for the life and health of the mother. I object to the recent effort in Congress to pass a law saying after 20 weeks, no such exceptions, because although these are rare, Brett, they sometimes arise in the most complex, difficult medical situation.
Well, including mental health, we should point out, Democrats had said in the opposition to the 20-week bill. That is Hillary Clinton back in March. It was the first time the Democratic candidates had been asked about abortion. That was the town hall in Detroit. And the issue came up last night, specifically partial birth abortion. Here are the latest stats. Overall abortion. On the issue of abortion, would you say you are more pro-life or pro-choice? And this has flipped in recent years. It used to be pro-life was leading in this across the board, and now you see the polls shifting a bit. But when on the issue of abortion after 24 weeks is what this next poll shows you. Oppose, it's a Harvard study, 61% to 23%, and you go around the country and that's you hear that about partial birth abortion. We're back with the panel. Mara, it did come out last night, and there is a dramatic rift between these two campaigns.
There's a dramatic rift. I know you have some tape to play on this, but I thought it was really interesting because what Pence did focused on partial birth. What Tim Kaine did is he went to the most safe ground for. Yeah, you want to play that?
Let's listen and then we'll react to it.
What I can't understand is with Hillary Clinton and now Senator Kaine at her side is to support a practice like partial birth abortion. The very idea that a child that is almost born into the world could still have their life taken from them is just anathema to me.
We support the constitutional right of American women to consult their own conscience, their own supportive partner, their own minister, but then make their own decision about pregnancy.
This is where the abortion wars have stood for a very long time. When the subject is very broad, abortion in general, legal or not, the Democrats are on stronger ground. When it gets more specific to this issue of partial birth abortion, especially if you think that the fetus or the child could live outside the womb at that point, then the Republicans do better. So, and there you saw it. And it really hasn't changed much in a very long time.
Governor Pence was the one who brought up the social issue and went almost in a soft way, but an aggressive way to Tim Kaine. It was thought going in that perhaps Tim Kaine was going to give the LGBT issue and religious freedom to Mike Pence.
Well, again, this might play into the theories about where Pence wants to begin 2020, but I think Mara is exactly right. At the extreme one end of the pregnancy, the conservatives have the winning political argument. Everyone thinks that an abortion at 8.5 months is a pretty ugly thing unless you're really ideologically committed. And most Americans actually are okay with terminating a pregnancy very early on. And what drives me crazy about the Tim Kaine position in this is that it's this fallback that goes back to Mario Cuomo, which says, I am personally opposed, but I don't have the right to impose my values or my beliefs on other people. Obamacare, taxes, spending, every other issue of government, liberals and conservatives say this reflects my values, I consult my religion, I consult my faith on, and then they have this one carve out for abortion. And the reason why this doesn't go away is because under Roe v. Wade and Doe, the Constitution says, according to the Supreme Court, that you can terminate a pregnancy at any point, which makes us much more extreme than almost any place in Europe.
And that is where there is not, you know, Hillary Clinton is trying to put something there to say it's complex, but Barack Obama, for example, ran for president with not a restriction.
Yeah, and to send Tim Kaine out to make this argument is very difficult for Tim Kaine himself. You know, he's a devoted Catholic, and he is, he's tried to sort of wheedle that narrow, that thin line between saying, well, you know, me personally, but then I'm not going to do it publicly, and then, but we've also seen he's been sort of sent out on some other things with, you know, when President Clinton was impeached, he was, you know, he said that Bill Clinton should leave office, and he's had to reverse all of that. And I just think it's very, you know, obviously everybody's talking about Mike Pence and his future. I think it's very interesting to think about Tim Kaine's future and what the Clinton machine, you know, what the Clinton campaign is doing for his future. And I think it's not helping him.
But on this particular issue, is it somehow ripe for the Trump campaign? Even though Trump has evolved himself to pro-life, is it somehow, or at least getting conservatives together?
Well, that's what I thought. My reaction to this last night was, wow, he's really speaking to the base. It's kind of late in the game to be trying to energize your base. You'd think they'd have them all sewn up, but it's because Donald Trump doesn't have social issues as a top priority for him. He's barely talked about it. He wasn't quite sure how to talk about it. That's why he got all tied up in knots about punishing women. And I think Mike Pence was reassuring the base, reassuring Christian conservatives, yes, we are with you. He did a lot of that last night.
Partial birth abortion in African-American communities with African-American pastors, that's not enough to get them to vote for Donald Trump.
My problem
I agree with you. Yes, they're with him on that, but not enough.
Trump has largely solidified the base. His problem isn't with conservatives, me notwithstanding. His problem is with white, college-educated suburban women, and I'm not sure
then
that.
Why are they doing this?
Then that's why I floated the base. Maybe it has more to do with 2020 than it has to do with what the Trump campaign actually needs in terms of the data.
Which is why we talked about it tonight. That's it for the panel, but stay tuned for the joy of live TV. Finally tonight, another email scandal. This one on Fox Business Network's Cavuto Coast to Coast. Neil was in the spin room live last night doing his show, minding his own business, conducting an interview, and then Sean Hannity popped up.
But he wasn't. He's caught on.
Do you know he doesn't answer my emails? Do you know that? I write you. I hope you're feeling better. I miss you. I love you. I'm like, and you don't write me back. You don't even say hello.
This guy interrupts like Tim Kaine.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
That's a good line. That's
guys, thank you both very, very much.
I love you.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Neil Cavuto. He works harder than anyone else on TV.
And this is Sean Hannity. He's just looking around for something.
Yes.
All right, thanks, buddy. Very, very much.
By the way, Sean Hannity has the vice presidential nominee Mike Pence tonight. Thanks for inviting us in your home tonight. That's it for Special Report. Fair, balanced, and unafraid.